There is a force within you that civilization has forgotten how to name. It's older than your desires, older than your ambitions, older even than your thoughts. It's the current that moves beneath the surface of life, a mysterious union of chaos and creation. Most men today are hollowed out because they've lost contact with that force. They chase pleasure, validation, and power without understanding that all of it stems from a single seed, their vital essence. Semen retention is not merely about not releasing. It is about remembering the original covenant between man and the mysterious feminine that governs nature itself. It's about rediscovering what ancient mystics called the dance between Shiva and Shakti, consciousness and energy, order and chaos. If you're ready to walk this path, join the free Telegram channel, whose link is in the description. That's where we explore these deeper truths together, beyond what the algorithm allows. Throughout history, the greatest men were never merely disciplined. They were aligned. Their discipline came from understanding life as polarity, the masculine as stillness, the feminine as movement. In every culture, from the yogis of India to the alchemists of Egypt, this polarity was expressed as a sacred science. The seed was considered the philosopher's stone, the living link between the mortal and the divine. When wasted, it dragged a man back to the dust of his instincts. When preserved, it turned instinct into intuition, lust into wisdom, and desire into devotion. Modernity calls this superstition, yet our collapsing attention spans, our numbing addictions, and our inability to love deeply all testify otherwise. The ancient key wasn't lost, it was mocked, because a society built on consumption cannot survive men who remember how to create from within. Before we continue, if you find meaning in this kind of work, consider contributing through the thanks button below. No matter how small the contribution is, every act of support helps us to keep producing content that goes against the shallow current of modern noise and brings depth back into our collective consciousness. Philosophically, semen retention is not about repression. It is not about running away from desire. It is the art of confronting desire until it transforms. The ancient mystics understood that repression breeds sickness, but transmutation breeds strength. You take the same energy that could destroy you and refine it through awareness. Psychology calls this sublimation. Jung would say it is the confrontation with the shadow, the acknowledgement of your own capacity for lust, chaos, and destruction, followed by its conscious integration. Every man carries within him a serpent coiled at the base of his spine, dormant yet potent. When he releases constantly, the serpent never awakens. When he contains, the serpent begins to rise. This serpent, known as Kundalini in the East, is not a literal creature but a metaphor for the feminine force of life itself. It is the chaos that births all form, and only a man who can hold it without fear learns what true masculinity is. Science, too, has hints of this ancient wisdom. Studies on dopamine regulation show that overstimulation dulls the brain's reward system, creating a constant need for novelty. Men today are trapped in cycles of digital seduction, short videos, artificial intimacy, endless scrolling, all of it mirroring the same mechanism as pornography. Retention reverses this. It recalibrates dopamine sensitivity, restoring motivation and drive. Testosterone, too, fluctuates with retention cycles. But more than the hormones, it's the psychology that transforms. When you withhold your essence, you send a message to your body and psyche that your energy is sacred, that you will not give it away for momentary relief. You begin to command yourself instead of being commanded by impulses. The difference is existential, not biological. History tells us that societies rise when men harness this principle and fall when they squander it. The Greeks called it sophresin, the virtue of self-control. The Egyptians encoded it in their mystery schools. The Taoists practiced inner alchemy, circulating sexual energy to nourish the spirit. Yet in every age of decay, this wisdom was forgotten. The Roman Empire in its final days drowned in hedonism. The philosophers wrote about moderation, while the masses indulged. The same cycle repeats now. We celebrate liberation, but forget that freedom without form leads to chaos. Men are told to express without restraint. Women are told to seduce without depth. And the sacred tension between masculine and feminine collapses into mutual resentment. The dark feminine wants a mystery to be revered, becomes a caricature to be feared or exploited. But in truth, she has not disappeared. She has merely taken another shape. To understand the dark feminine is to understand the chaotic intelligence that tests the masculine soul. She appears in dreams, in temptations, and the patterns of modern society. She is the whisper that says, "Give in, you've earned it." She is the allure of comfort, the endless stream of stimulation, the invitation to dissolve your focus into pleasure. Yet, beneath her tests lies a gift. The man who resists, not through denial but through understanding, learns to see her differently. He no longer sees women as objects or enemies, nor his desires as sins. He sees them as mirrors, reflections of his inner unmastered energies. The ancient key is not abstinence, it is reverence. You hold your essence, not because the world forbids it, but because you recognize its sacredness. You refuse to throw pearls before swine, to spill gold into the dirt of unconsciousness. Psychologically, the dark feminine corresponds to the unconscious. She is the womb of all potential. Without her, there can be no creation. But to enter her realm without preparation is to be consumed by her. Myths across cultures speak of this. Persephone's descent into Hades, Inanna's journey through the underworld, the tales of sirens luring sailors to their doom. These are not just stories about women. They are stories about the human soul entering its depths. The semen, symbolically, is the light of consciousness. When scattered, it cannot illuminate the dark. When preserved and focused, it descends willingly into the feminine abyss and returns transformed, wiser, stronger, whole. This is the secret behind all true initiation. It's not about rejecting the feminine but meeting her on equal ground. In today's world, this philosophy becomes revolutionary. The modern man is domesticated by comfort and distracted by abundance. He seeks validation instead of mastery, release instead of realization. The ancient discipline of retention cuts through this. It forces confrontation with boredom, loneliness, and longing. Emotions most men escape through screens. But when you hold your seed, you hold yourself accountable. You learn to transmute that restlessness into creation. Art, business, purpose, fitness, spiritual practice, all become channels for that energy. You stop chasing and start emanating. This is not magic. It's physics of the psyche. Energy seeks expression, and when denied its lower outlet, it finds a higher one. Yet this path is not for everyone. It demands honesty. It exposes your addictions, your insecurities, your avoidance. You will feel the pull of the dark feminine more intensely than ever, not just in women but in life itself. She will seduce you with comfort, challenge you with chaos, test your patience through temptation. But remember, she is not your enemy. She is your mirror. When you can look into her eyes without fear or need, you have found the sacred balance. That balance is the true alchemy of retention, not simply holding back release, but learning to hold the whole of existence within your awareness without losing yourself. Philosophers have long known that creative power is born from tension. Without polarity, there is no spark. In Taoism, yin and yang are not opposites, but complementary forces. In modern physics, matter and energy are interchangeable. In psychology, the conscious and unconscious must integrate for wholeness. The semen, in this framework, becomes a symbol of potential energy. The more you contain it consciously, the more gravitational your presence becomes. You begin to influence without effort, attract without seeking, command without demanding. The ancient kings, warriors, and mystics understood this. Their celibacy was not repression but refinement, the deliberate redirection of energy toward divine or creative purpose. Societally, we are now in an age where the dark feminine dominates unconsciously. Our economy thrives on desire. Advertising seduces like a siren. Politics manipulates emotion like a lover's quarrel. And entertainment feeds our lower instincts while starving our higher ones. Men who cannot hold their seed become easy to control, for their attention is always fragmented. Retention, therefore, becomes rebellion. It's a silent revolt against systems that feed on your weakness. The man who practices it steps outside the loop of instant gratification and reclaims his sovereignty. He becomes unpredictable, not because he hides, but because he no longer chases what others chase. He begins to embody order amidst chaos, the Shiva to the world's Shakti. And this is where understanding the dark feminine becomes not just personal, but civil. When men forget how to hold her energy, she turns destructive. When they remember, she becomes transformative. You can see it in relationships. Men who worship women fall into codependency. Men who fear women turn bitter. But men who respect the feminine as mystery learn balance. They no longer seek dominance or submission, but communion. They meet the feminine not to possess her, but to mirror her back to herself as consciousness. That is what the ancients meant when they spoke of the sacred marriage. Tieros gamos. Retention prepares a man for that union, because he has learned to face desire without drowning in it. On a deeper level, this practice awakens all. You begin to see every woman, every moment, every emotion as an aspect of the same energy. You understand why mystics saw the Divine Mother in all creation. Because when you stop using her energy for pleasure, you start perceiving her as power. The dark feminine is no longer the temptress pulling you down. She becomes the goddess lifting you higher. She is Kali, who destroys ignorance. Lilith, who refuses submission. Isis, who resurrects the dead. Shakti, who animates all form. The man who can look into that darkness without fear discovers light that no pleasure can match, the light of inner wholeness. So retention is not a rule, it's a revelation. It's a remembering of your sacred role in the cosmic dance. You are not meant to suppress your nature, but to master it. You are not meant to flee from the feminine, but to face her, within and without, with reverence and courage. And as you do, you begin to live differently. Your speech carries weight. Your gaze steadies. Your creativity sharpens. You no longer beg for meaning because you are producing it. You no longer chase love because you are embodying it. And in that transformation, the world itself begins to respond differently to you. Because energy recognizes energy, and when yours is whole, it draws the world toward its center. This is the forgotten initiation of manhood, hidden beneath centuries of misunderstanding and modern distraction. To walk this path is to remember what every ancient culture once knew, that the key to understanding the dark feminine is not found in books or rituals, but in the silence of a man who holds his essence with awareness, who walks through temptation without losing his direction, and who learns to love chaos as the mother of order. Retain, not as punishment, but as practice. Hold, not out of fear, but out of reverence. And in that stillness, you will hear what the ancients heard. The whisper of the universe through the voice of the feminine, calling you not to conquer her, but to dance with her.